Welcome gallery staff and councillors to this first ordinary meeting of this council. It's a short term of 2 years and 9 months, and I welcome you all to the future of our council over this period of time. I'll open the meeting with the acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Bundjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate the continuing culture connection to lands, their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Mr General Manager, could you read the prayer, please?
Dear Lord, we meet to serve our Richmond Valley community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Thank you. Public access. Today we have requests for 2 public accesses which have been granted. The first one is from Mrs Deborah Johnson in relation to item 17.1 grant application, information reports November 2021, December 2021 and January 2022. Deborah, would you like to come forward, please? Welcome, Deborah. Just to make it easier for councillors, have you got what grant application you're going to refer to, or is it just the process?
There's 3 particularly, so the flood study grant, the grant for riparian rehabilitation, and also the grant that you put in for the ecological educator.
Thank you very much. You've been distributed with the requirements of the Code of Conduct and everything, I believe, for the meeting process?
6 to 5 minutes.
Yep, okay, all right, and you'll get a bell at 4 minutes and, yep, okay. Welcome, and when you're ready, away you go.
This one? That one, okay. All right, okay, thank you for listening. Bundjalung Valley is subject to frequent and unpredictable floods. There is no current way to predict what happens in the Bundjalung in relation to flooding. Council have the ability and responsibility to reduce the danger to life. I commend Council for its flood study, which includes a 1,400 square kilometre Bundjalung catchment, a major flood storage basin for the Richmond River. The 2010 study was an inaccurate model based on insufficient data of this area. I again request Council to install a midway automatic gauge. Bundjalung Levee, built in 1945, is a key asset protecting many in the lower Richmond River. No major repairs were needed to the levee until 2017, when the new highway dammed the Bundjalung catchment, increasing the height and flow velocity of water in the river, breaching the levee. This was repaired by Rouse and again in the same spot in 2021 and is still not finished. BMT Global met with us to discuss floodwater behaviour and was shocked with the damage causing erosion, such as by carp. Their calculations do not include the effects of erosion. DA 2021-0289 in Bundjalung has been approved by Council as a primitive campground in high floodway hazard. That means danger to life and limb, evacuation difficult. How could Council grant consent to such a hazardous proposal? 70 people camping is dangerous, with high risk to them and to Council in the event of a flood causing damage, injury or death. Development consent must not be granted on land which is in high floodway hazard. Specific to this DA, DPIE recommended Council consult the new flood study assessing the DA. The study has not been finalised, therefore it couldn't be consulted. Applying the precautionary principles of ESD are not sufficient in this circumstance, considering the previous study did not have enough data for Bunga-Walbin. Council have acted preemptively and possibly negligently in approving this DA. The DA's flood evacuation plan suggests patrons will be given notice of a flood event. No notice was given in 2021 flood. A long-time local went to get supplies in Coraki, less than 10 minutes away, and by the time he returned, the road was already underwater. The SES advertised Bunga-Walbin Road open when there was still 2 metres of water over the road. No consideration has been given to flash flooding caused by excessive clearing, log jams, etc. The flood 2 weeks ago reached minor flood level at 3 metres, and the bomb warning was cancelled the day before. If we long-term locals cannot predict behaviour, how will visiting campers? Council may find itself liable for their lives and safety. The grant request for an ecological educator is commendable. However, Council needs to have a good ecologist study this area, as well as provide support to Council. The Commonwealth Government recognises the Lower Bunga-Walbin Wetland Complex as containing extremely high nature conservation values, with one of the highest biodiversity levels in Australia, surpassed only by far North Queensland. That's incredible. The development abuts important environment protection zones, riparian zones, a nature reserve, and nationally important wetlands. Council and the community have a unique opportunity to protect this very special place to prevent its irreparable destruction. No programs in recent years have addressed the environmental significance of the Bunga-Walbin region or attempted to protect it. Despite the wording of the DA, there is ample evidence of national and state-threatened flora and fauna in the area and within the subject property. Giant lilies, jabberoos, jacanas, barking owls, white-bellied sea eagles, brolgas, Oxley and pygmy perch, and koalas. The terrible ratful fire engulfed the subject property, destroying nearby houses. Many endangered species are particularly vulnerable to severe fires such as this. What habitat remains must be protected and monitored to ensure the endangered and vulnerable species can survive. Allowing this development poses a direct threat to the wetlands and related ecosystems, with danger to
Deborah,
life and limb of its campers.
Just a second, please. You're starting to get off the original item.
I'm wrapping up.
No,
It's the end.
Of the grants, you are starting to specifically refer constantly to a DA, which is not a part of the grant application. So please stay on track. Thank you.
My concern is for the safety of the campers. There is not enough flood information to ensure their safety. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Would you take questions if there are any for you?
Yes.
Any councillor got any questions? Okay, well, thanks for your attendance and have a safe trip home. Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Richard Gates, Executive Member of the Evans Head Residents for Sustainable Development Incorporated, in relation to 5.2, 5.3, 14.2, 15.1 and 17.1. And just for the council's convenience, Mr. Gates, welcome. And have you identified any grant in that 17.1, Doctor?
Yes, a couple. In that, in particular, the connecting women to trades and the importance of employing an ecologist.
Thank you. When you're ready, proceed. And no need to ask you if you know the regulations. You've been here on many occasions. Welcome.
Thank you. This is my first time.
Of this meeting, of this term, yes. Thank
First
you.
time for this council. Anyway, congratulations, councillors, on your election to the new council. I'd like to address 5 items today, which you've already identified. First of all, 5.2, the request for a change to the rate peg for New South Wales. I do not support this request for a rate hike, but I support the request for IPART to be held accountable for its actions and decisions. While council might have a hike in various costs outlined in the Mayor's Minute, so do ratepayers, many on fixed incomes or stagnant wages. Be very clear, the prosperity of the average person is eroding, and so at the same time is his or her sense of economic security. There's a wide range of studies which show that. The state government has been cost-shifting the running of local government for a number of years as part of so-called local government reform, no matter the social or economic circumstances of a local government area. This is not reform. This is the ratepayers being screwed by the state government, using economic pressure to push change. We have been suffering that push through cumulative increases in rates and charges, through special rate variations and dramatic reductions in federal assistance grants, where the state and federal governments have been starving us of funds, our tax dollars. Before any action is taken, I urge councillors to seek a financial report telling us how council will be affected by the pegged rate and what the differential effects will be on ratepayers by community and rating structure. It's time to stop cost shifting, and the state government needs to get that message. Federal assistance grants need to be restored for the basic needs of council, and it's time to push back on this alleged reform. Second item is 5.3 roadworks. I support the request for more funding for roads, but we should not have to go with a begging bowl for funds each time money is needed for roadworks. As for the previous item, we should be asking for restoration of federal assistance grants funding so that so much time does not need to be spent applying for funds which should be ours anyway. We have a huge road network to maintain over more than 3,000 square kilometres, used not just by us. The third item is delegation of authority to the General Manager. My comment is straightforward and without any issue of integrity. It's about perception. I note authority is to be delegated to the GM for determining the allocation of Section 356 Community Financial Assistance Programs and the allocation of funding for the Event Support Program, with both following a workshop with councillors. Councillors, these workshops are supposed to be for information and not de facto decision-making processes behind closed doors. These are not transparent processes available to the public view. They should be. I oppose opaque decision-making processes, even with the best of intentions. They are anathema to the public interest and do not enhance the public view of decision-making processes in local government or the issue of trust. Perception is everything. The fourth item is financial reports. I appreciate the comprehensive report on the state of Council's finances. I note that Council continues to invest in the fossil fuel industry, notwithstanding clearly documented climate change, which is acknowledged, and the problem of stranded assets. I note with some alarm the downturn in T Corp investments, and am reminded of the financial and monetary adventurism in which local government engaged more than a decade ago, where we lost money. I am not happy with the lack of transparency with the T Corp information, and I'm reminded here of the $4 billion black hole in iCare, courtesy of bad management by the state government under the leadership of the current Premier. The New South Wales Treasury Corporation stewardship approach focuses on reporting only the different asset classes, not individual investments and the level of investment in the fossil fuel industry. This is not good enough. How can you make an informed decision in the absence of information? Council must revisit its investment strategy for the $68 million under its control for the long run for ethical investment, and must not be captive of the state government opaque T-Corp investments. Council has an obligation under Section 8 of the Local Government Act to consider the principles of intergenerational equity and the legacy it leaves. Yes, it can be argued that T Corp may provide the best financial return on investment and therefore leaves us in the best financial position for the future, but I see no evidence that this will be the case. The sudden January correction should be a warning to all of you. Finally, item 17.1, grant application information. I commend strongly Council for seeking funds for connecting women to trades, for important flood studies, and to employ an ecologist to educate and collaborate with our community. May I suggest that the ecologist also be employed as part of the planning section of council to assist them in their role so that grave mistakes such as the recent approval of the primitive bush camp at Bungawalbin does not occur again. In my view, employment of an ecologist would have assisted greatly in bringing a proper ecological systems perspective to deliberations about this unfortunate proposal with potential detrimental effects on the Bungawalbin catchment. The assessment process was unclear and not complete and provided no measure to assess the ecological impacts of the camp. Councillors, I am reminded of a plan I prepared for Pinery Provincial Park in Ontario, Canada in 1967, in which similar development occurred against evidence-based recommendations. The whole area had to be closed after 5 years because of major public health issues. The same potential is there for this particular proposal. The camp should be reassessed with the advice of an ecologist. The sooner you get an experienced and well-qualified ecologist, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you take questions if there are any?
Sure, happy to.
Has any councillors got any questions?
I have one.
Councillor,
Yeah,
Dr Gates, just a bit of housekeeping.
sure.
Since my time on council, I'll just change my glasses so I can read.
Yep.
Since my time on council, you've used public access and question time quite a bit.
Yep.
As we all know. Yep. You've previously addressed council as the president of the Evans Head Memorial Aerodrome Committee.
Yep.
I noticed this time you were addressing council as the executive member, Evans Head Residents for Sustainable Development Incorporated. Can you give us an overview of this group and what permissions you rely on to address council on their behalf, if you don't mind?
It's a group which is primarily based in Evans Head but has other supporters from other areas. It's been operating probably for, I think, at least 8 years now. The authority for this comes from the executive of that committee to be able to speak on their behalf.
Just one more thing.
Sure.
All the members, they're not all residents of the Richmond Valley Council, they come from afar?
No, I don't think there's anybody who's not from the local government area.
Thank you.
I'd have to check that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case, yeah.
Mr Gates, is it an incorporated organisation?
Yes, it is, that's correct.
Thank you.
Incorporated Association, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your
All right,
attendance.
pleasure. Thank
Dr
you.
Gates, and have a safe trip home also. Thank you. Councillors, the General Manager has also received one grant and been request and been granted for question time. And Ms Rosemary Joseph, would you like to come forward, please, Rosemary, and ask your questions?
She's addressing and then asking questions.
Sorry, didn't realise it was a request for public access, so when you're ready, and then you can ask your question.
May I take this off, or do I need to talk through this? Like, I'll pull it down?
Yeah, pull it down a bit then, yeah.
Okay. My name's Rosemary Joseph, and I represent the community group Beyond Bentley, Our Sustainable Future Incorporated. Prior to incorporation, our community group was known as the Bentley Gatekeepers. The group was formed in 2014 with the aim of protecting the Bentley Valley from industrialisation and preserving our productive farmland into the future. Beyond Bentley, Our Sustainable Future was incorporated on the 8th of February 2019. Our main objectives are set out in the Constitution are to provide a friendly forum for community members to share knowledge and information and engage in discussion about issues that are of interest to the local community, to promote sustainable environmental practices and regenerative agriculture to benefit the local environment and its people, to plan and implement workshops and events that are of benefit to the community and the broader Northern Rivers region, to apply for appropriate grants and funds for projects and events that are in the community's interest, and to do all things determined necessary in the absolute discretion of the Association to protect the environment in the communities of the Northern Rivers. The Beyond Bentley group consists of over 40 community members who have committed to the above objectives. The group is not opposed to development in the Bentley Valley, but we believe it should be sustainable and not in conflict with the natural environment and with the long-standing rural and agricultural livelihoods and the way of life in the valley. And with regard to the Casino to Bentley Rail Trail, our group applauds this wonderful tourism vision and initiative by the Richmond Valley Council. Indeed, it's such an important project that the Richmond Valley Destination Management Plan 2021 to 2025 identifies the Casino to Bentley Rail section of the Northern Rivers Rail Trail as a critical catalyst project which will help to enhance the visitor and investment appeal of Casino. Members of our community group support the rail trail, and some are already planning tourism developments which will be mutually beneficial, such as horse stabling facilities, farm stays, bush camping, and of course the amazing Blue Victoria project, which is already a successfully operating farm stay business and grazing property, growing Black Angus cross Wagyu beef cattle. It's a paddock to plate initiative, and it's processed in Casino. Its visionary plans will make a fantastic attraction to encourage tourists to use the Casino to Bentley Rail Trail. In fact, it's a perfect total tourism package. Our members believe that the rail trail will not only benefit the economy of the local Bentley community, but it can also benefit the wider Casino community's economic growth. One aspect of the rail trail that we find most exciting is the Bentley precinct, although we like to refer to it as the Bentley hub, as indeed that is what it can actually become. There are endless opportunities for the community to be part of this. There could be market days, farmers markets, field days, and perhaps other community activities such as yoga classes or school excursions, all designed to be part of a vibrant calendar of authentic destinations and events, as identified in the Richmond Valley Destination Management Plan. There is even a proposal to hold a Bentley Festival, and plans have been with Council for some time. However, COVID put a stop to this a year or so ago. Several of these activities are already happening at the Big Shed on Blue Victoria. The community has held a very successful market day there, and the Big Shed has hosted several agri-field day workshops and similar events. And the community often just gets together there to socialise and get to know each other better. Richmond Valley Destination Management Plan states that currently there is very little tourism product creating a real point of difference in the Richmond Valley. The community believes that it can create a point of difference. Part of the Blue Victoria project is to restore the heritage-listed Armstrong Homestead to become a local village museum and cafe, and that's an incredibly unique tourist opportunity and experience. What a great way for visitors to our region to learn about the special history of the Bentley Valley and the disputed plains. And what about those plans for glamping cabins on Bungaree? Where else in Richmond Valley is there such an incredible and unique farm stay accommodation? It is vital that the Casino to Bentley Rail Trail has a really appealing destination. One will attract visitors from far and wide and encourage people to walk or ride this trail. We believe that the community's vision for the Bentley Valley will do just that. Our biggest concern to the success of all these ventures, and especially that of the rail trail, is conflicting land use in the valley. The proposed expansion of the Bentley Quarry will destroy everything that would attract tourists along the trail. The peace and tranquility will be destroyed. The views over the farmland and to the rolling hills, as described in the Rail Trail Master Plan, would be marred by an industrial industry. It's already actually visible from the proposed picnic area and playground area. Walkers and riders will have to be super vigilant as they cross Bentley Road to avoid serious injury from the 140 quarry truck movements along this road. This section of the rail trail crosses Bentley Road here, and it's already been identified as a dangerous section in the master plan. Should the Bentley Quarry be approved, the 1 kilometre exclusion zone around the quarry would mean that the glamping cabins on Bungaree development cannot proceed. This would be a real loss for tourism in the Richmond Valley LGA. Tonight's council agenda states that once completed, the full Casino to Lismore Rail Trail will become a must-do experience for both locals and visitors to the region, achieving positive economic, environmental and social outcomes for the community. The rail trail will attract both domestic and international visitors to the region, creating new business opportunities and supporting existing businesses to grow. Beyond Bentley, our sustainable future has a similar vision, and we would welcome the opportunity to work with Council in making this become a reality. We love where we live, and we want others to live it too, to love it too.
Thank you. Would you like to ask your questions now?
Questions,
The
yes.
If you can ask them all and run through to 4, and the General Manager will ask them.
Okay.
Thank you.
What does Council see as the benefits to the local community of the rail trail development?
You can ask right through the 4 of them, and the General
Oh,
Manager.
ask the 4, sorry.
Yes, please.
How can the local community be involved to ensure the success of the rail trail? Does Council acknowledge the risks posed to the federally funded $17.4 million investment in the rail trail by inappropriate developments such as the Bentley Quarry? And should the quarry be approved with its associated blasting, crushing and 140 truck movements a day, how does Council envisage the functioning of the camping, picnic and playground at Bentley Precinct, only 1.2 kilometres away, which is an important component of the rail trail?
Mr. General Manager, answer, please.
Yes. Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thanks for your address, and I'll answer those questions in order. We can sort of take these on notice and come back to you, but we do tend to like to just give you a response tonight. Obviously, the community are interested in these questions. I might just take my mask off so you make sure you can hear me clearly. But yeah, we obviously try to and generally do answer these questions, hence getting them in advance. So to answer the first question about the benefits, obviously many of the benefits you've just outlined, we share those views, and we see this, well, Council sees this and the community as a very exciting project. It's a regionally significant project, has a lot of interest right across the region, and the benefits will not only be there for people of Bentley, but also the Richmond Valley. But also bring economic, environmental and social benefits to all of the Northern Rivers region. Some of the benefits that are outlined in the economic impact assessment that was undertaken for the Casino to Eltham stage of the rail trail, some of the examples there are during the construction phase. It's estimated the project will generate 62 cumulative direct local jobs and support 24.4 million in additional spending in the community, and a further 127 indirect jobs. On its completion, the Casino to Eltham stage, which is what that business case was prepared for, is forecast to attract almost 52,000 persons per annum initially, including 28,250 local users, and attract 23,200 visitors to the Northern Rivers region. So all that activity obviously generates, spending in our local economies, additional jobs, and so yeah, we certainly see those as benefits for the Richmond Valley. And I think you've outlined some of the benefits for the people of Bentley, and we're certainly aware, and our team are working with residents right along the rail trail to realise some of those opportunities, and we certainly encourage anyone who is interested to engage with our team, but also with the Destination North Coast team, who've recently been running workshops, and I know members of your group did attend those workshops. So I just encourage further involvement, and we're certainly keen to work with all members in our community and businesses to capitalise on the rail trail. I think the really great news was Lismore City Council receiving funding for the Bentley to Lismore section, which provides a great opportunity for Bentley to be a midway point, which might create some additional opportunities there as well. So the second question, how the local community can be involved. We've been working with, there is a Northern Rivers Rail Trail group. We've been working with them for more than 5 years now to get to where we are. And through that time, we've been communicating and working with a number of members of our community. There'll be more workshops and information sessions specific to the rail trail. To keep updated, I'd encourage people, if they haven't already, to visit the Casino Bentley Rail Trail Facebook page, where regular updates specific to the trail are provided. We also do that on the Richmond Valley Council Facebook page at times as well. As I mentioned, our project team, our lead's actually Brad Burney, who some of you will have already had some interaction with, and Brad's role is to continue to promote the benefits of the rail trail. Brad's now in our economic development team, so I'd encourage people who haven't connected with us yet to contact Brad direct at council and have a chat with him. There's also an option for people to join or become members of the Northern Rivers Rail Trail Supporters Group. And so that group is involved in looking at ways to raise funds and explore opportunities from the rail trail. And again, if people want more information on that, Brad is the contact to connect people to there. So question number 3 was around the risks of the investment of rail trail from the proposed Bentley Quarry development. So in response, so council's focus, as I've outlined, is obviously on delivering the Richmond Valley section of the Northern Rivers Rail Trail. We're looking forward to construction of the trail commencing soon. You may have already seen that there's further clearing happening, and tonight's agenda includes the detailed design tender. So it's up for approval by council this evening. It's not appropriate for me to comment on a DA that's currently in the assessment stage and is a DA that will be determined by the Northern Region Planning Panel. So our role in these, for developments such as this, is to support the planning panel through the assessment process to make sure that it has all the information it needs to make a fully informed decision. As part of that process, there was the recent public exhibition where public submissions were submitted, and they will be considered as part of the assessment process and by the panel. So the panel's role is to consider the merits of the proposal and potential impacts on matters including neighbouring properties, road networks and other things that you've mentioned tonight, and may also include consideration of the rail trail and other associated activities. And I'm sure and am aware that some of those neighbours have obviously taken the opportunity to make submissions, and they will be considered seriously as part of that process. To the final question around should the quarry be approved, what would council do to manage some of the forecast activities for that development? So obviously, and as I've said, the planning panel's role is to assess the DA on its merits. That's what the planning laws require, and to take into account permissibility and surrounding land uses before it makes its determination. So I'm not going to get into the detail of responding to the sort of specifics in that question, other than to say that I'm sure they will be considered in the assessment process. We are, and we'll focus on getting the rail trail completed, and as much of it completed as possible. We see the, obviously in the master plan, the camping and the playground, I think is the section you referred to as the Bentley Hub. We see that as a really exciting part of that master plan, and we'll certainly be doing our best to realise it, as it will be a really good draw card. To round that one out, if the DA were to be approved, our role will be to identify and implement any measures that enable the activities in that area to coexist, and we do that in our role as assessing and determining any development proposal right across the Richmond Valley, and we would certainly be doing the same if that were to occur. But obviously I'm not going to preempt decisions of the Northern Region Planning Panel. So thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Rosemary, before you go, are you willing to take questions if
Yes,
councillors have
certainly,
any?
yeah.
Has any councillors got any questions of Rosemary?
Yeah, I've got a
Councillor
question.
Deegan.
Sorry.
You're right.
And given the points the General Manager's just made, please let me know if this question isn't appropriate. So, Ms Joseph, you mentioned the benefits of the rail trail and potential new tourism industries around Bentley, and then you expressed concern about Is there an idea of how many jobs would be created through this industry and what the impact would be of the proposed development application? And please let me know if that's not appropriate.
Sorry, Councillor, just clarify, when you mentioned the jobs...
So
you
the
ref-
jobs in the new
from-
tourism...
From tourism?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Well,
Is that something your organisation has looked at?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
I can't speak for Blue Victoria development or project, but I know that the manager of that has spoken about at least 20 jobs will be, 20 people will be employed on the Blue Victoria project at least. I've heard him say it's maybe 20 to 30, but I mean, it's obviously a stage project, but he was going to be talking tonight, but his email didn't come through.
Okay, thanks.
I think
Okay.
the general manager mentioned some jobs when he spoke. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, this was obviously from the economic impact assessment that was in the Casino to Eltham stage business case, and it talks about jobs in the construction phase, but then also ongoing. It talks about the spending, at least $2 million additional per year, 15 direct jobs across the region. I mean, just from what's been outlined, that may be a conservative estimate. If people do take advantage of the opportunity of this and the visitors and, farm stays and cabins and glamping and those sorts of things, if we, really engage with that, there's some real potential for more jobs than that. Yeah, I think it's certainly an exciting project.
Yep.
I'll just ask a general question.
Councillor Hayes.
Aimed at everyone in the room. The rail trail being constructed over existing railway lines, surely somewhere in the length of this rail trail there's got to be other situations where they've come across heavy industry issues where there's conflict and they've had to deal with them. So, if there's any of them out there, how have they dealt with them?
So are you referring to sort of other rail trails?
Yeah. The length of our rail trail, being on railway tracks, I'm sure there's got to be heavy industry along there somewhere that still operates, and they've had to do something with conditions to alleviate the conflict.
Hmm. Oh, I'm sure there will be. Well, example will be when the trail, in going through Lismore, there will be sections there that are adjacent to industrial areas, and that's where conditions can be included in certain developments. So, yeah, you're right. There will be areas that rail trails go past or coexist with all sorts of development. I don't know whether the team went to Tumbarumba. I don't know whether, I think you went to Tumbarumba, Director Zola, whether you have any feedback on that sort of comment?
Yeah, just in response to that, when we went for our visit to Tumbarumba, which is Tumbarumba to Rosewood, which is about 21 k's of trail, right next door to the trailhead at the Tumbarumba end was essentially the council depot. So not quite heavy industry, but a lot of leftover machinery and stuff that dealt with fires that went through there several years before that. So it was quite a contrast, but obviously something that they'd had to deal with, and it was so there is industry on the Rosewood Tumbarumba Trail.
Councillor, is there any more questions of Ms Joseph? We're getting a bit off the track. A lot of these questions can be asked in the debate on the issue later. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Rosemary, and
Thank you.
have a safe journey home. Councillors, that brings us to apologies. We have a full house, but I have been asked by Councillor Hayes to mention he's apologising for not having covered footwork on the night. He's actually got an injured foot, so he was just like me to raise that he always wears foot cover to the meeting. There's no need to note that, I don't think, Mr General Manager. Apologies, we've got that. Mayoral minute on page 6, item. Hang on, maybe I've jumped the jump, can't I? No. 5.1 on page 6, I'll move that. Could I get a second, please?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey. Well, councillors, congratulations to everyone on their election for this term of council, which will be a short one of only 2 years and 9 months, which I mentioned earlier. I acknowledge the contribution of our two former councillors, Danielle Simpson and Janelle Lyons, who served 9 and 5 years respectively on Richmond Valley Council, and thank them for their dedication and commitment to our community. I believe the last term was one of the most challenging for our community and council due to severe drought, bushfires and floods, which saw a total of 10 natural disasters declarations, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. However, during this time, the previous council achieved some very positive outcomes and pathways for the future, which was identified in the end of term report. I look forward to working with our community, staff and fellow councillors to create a community strategic plan and develop our delivery program for this current term. Does any other councillor like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you and congratulations also to you, Mr Mayor. I supported both Roberts many times during the recent campaign, and the story in the Indy on the two Bobs, I feel, painted a pretty good picture of the respect and the teamwork that exists here at Richmond Valley Council. I feel privileged to have been returned to council, and I look forward to working with yourself, councillors, staff and our community. I'm looking forward to the responses from the community during our big conversation public meetings. They'll be starting this Thursday as together we think about, where we want to be in 10 years' time and review the community strategic plan. It will be an incredible experience for us with our community during the term to see the completion of the signature projects, and there are a number of them. And I think the scale, how they were purpose-built with modern contemporary design, I think that will be exciting and perhaps a little overwhelming in the best way possible to see them finished. An important aspect of the term, I feel, will be to manage how connected and interrelated programs and projects are. For example, industry, jobs requiring roads, housing, services, water, sewerage. Roads require maintenance, plants require upgrades and replacements. As results of our strategies come to hand, it will be important to ensure that decisions moving forward have positive and complementary impacts on all the interrelated areas. Focusing on this term should prepare Richmond Valley for a robust and economically sound future. Thank you for the welcome, and back at you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No, well, I'll just wrap it up then. Look, I just look forward to working with everyone in the room, and I just hope that this council can leave a legacy like the previous council has done for us for the next term. So I'll put that motion, and all those in favour? Carried, unanimous. Page 7, 5.2. I'll move that. Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Humphries. Councillors, in December last year, IPART announced the lowest rate peg in 20 years of 0.7% for most of New South Wales regional and rural councils. However, wealthy metropolitan and regional councils with growth will receive much higher increases due to the introduction of IPART's new population growth formula. The report outlines the assumptions that IPART base their calculations on and what are not actual realities of increased costs that rural councils are experiencing in trying to access services, supplies and skilled workers. Clearly, the methodology used to calculate the local government cost index is out of step with reality, and comprehensive review of this methodology and IPART new population growth formula is due in consideration with the New South Wales Council. Councillors, last Friday I attended the JO meeting at Ballina, and this was a very hot topic, and I think it's got a long way to go. I do agree with Dr. Gates. Cost shifting has been occurring by both tiers of government onto local government. It's starting to stretch our resources and our funds, and when that happens, the community will be the ones that will suffer. Hopefully, next year there will be a more friendly increase, but in saying that, the government have to start taking local government more realistic, and it really frustrates me when I see a lot of our local government ministers over the years have been past councillors or mayors, and they are fully aware of the difficulties that local government have to handle, but they just don't want to seem to address the issue. So I think it's, as I said, the Local Government Shires Association will start pursuing this along with the JOs, and yeah, I think it really needs to be addressed, because this is really a slap in the face, 0.7. I don't know how some of the other councils are going to handle it. So I'd ask you for your support on this recommendation. Is there any other speakers? Councillor Deegan.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'd like to speak in support of the mayoral minute, and I certainly do note the concerns that Dr Gates has raised, and I'm certainly not a fan of excessive rate increases, but certainly of the view that a 0.7% rate increase does not keep up with the general CPI and inflation costs that council would need to cover. Yeah, so I support the motion for IPART to consider a 2% rate peg and review the methodology, and I do just note that it does seem strange that regional areas with larger road networks would have a lower rate peg than large metropolitan areas with larger rate bases. So yeah, certainly support this mayoral minute.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Humphries.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I also support your minute. The example that you've given with local government and their cost index calculating not reflecting current realities, like the construction costs 11%, with council experiencing increases up to 30%. That's bizarre, and you know we can't just sit here and take that without making comment. And as you've stated, there appears to be no correlation to the real costs that councils face every day. But in a way, I feel like it's even worse that there's no understanding by them of the challenges that councils in regional New South Wales face. Council has been tasked by the community to strive for economic development and job creation. And I don't think that's going to change. They were two of the top survey results. I don't think that's going to change during our big conversation public meetings. How are we going to keep the levels at anywhere near the standard that our community now expects at 0.7? So yes, I do support both parts of the mayoral minute. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Yeah, just to comment,
Councillor Hayes.
how lucky are we that we've still got our special rate variation in place to carry us through for the next 12 months? But if it continues at 0.7 after that, we're gonna struggle. So in a way, we're lucky that we brought that in, but it's just about to phase out. So.
Any other speakers? Councillors, I'll close then. It's just on page 7, it's like we can talk about fuel and the cost of supplies and that, and you know, oh, we got it wrong, or, you know, we didn't know to go up that. But when it's clearly written that IPART allows for a 1.2% increase in employee costs, when the industrial award for New South Wales councils operate under the local government award mandates 2% annual increase. So they know that, they know it's going to be 2%, but they only allow 1.2. So how can that, you know, justify? And that's why this needs a full review of how they come out with their figures. So I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Page 9, mayoral minute. I'll move that.
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillors, during the pre-poll at the recent local government elections, I and other councillors identified roads was the most issue raised. Also, our recent community survey mid-last year showed that roads, housing and jobs were the top 3 priorities. For our residents, as the report states, priorities for our residents. As the report states, Council currently maintains a road network of over 1,175 kilometres and spends around $19 million, which equates to 28% of our annual budget. Part 1 of the recommendation proposes that Council writes to the New South Wales Minister for Regional Transport and Roads, as well as our local members, highlighting the continued government support and funding for the Richmond Valley Road network is very essential. As you know, we could not fund a lot of this road work unless we had their support, and it does worry me that going forward there may be some cuts to repair the budget, but road funding is essential for everyone in our community, whether they be young, getting driven around, elderly, in buses and things like that. So roads are a major issue. We get told a lot that we don't spend enough on them, but when you're spending 28% of your budget on roads, it's very, very hard to find any more to spend. But you may note that I also asked for a report to come back to a future council meeting, and when we get that report, it may give us a bit more in depth into the situation we will have going forward. So, any other councillors? Sorry? Yeah, of course you can. Mr. General Manager.
I just thought it might be useful to add I suppose, an experience of a meeting that I had yesterday with, would have been at least a dozen residents of Lagoon Road near Corrikai. So Lagoon Road is the road that you go on to go to, it goes to Peterson's Quarry and the precast and then continues on. The first 4 kilometres is bitumen, council maintained. The bitumen finishes, and then there's another 4 kilometres of basically unformed, well, it's formed, but it's a Crown road, so it's not a council responsibility, so it's never been maintained by council. And it's a Crown road, so Crown Lands are responsible for it, but Crown Lands does not maintain any Crown roads anywhere in New South Wales. I suppose the reason I highlight it is that we've done an estimate, and in the Richmond Valley we've got 88 kilometres of these similar sort of Crown roads. So I think part of the feedback that we do get, it's a good question for you as councillors to understand exactly where people live. A lot of these Crown roads just access one property, but in this circumstance there's at least a dozen properties and obviously many more people who live on those properties, and I'd have to say it's not in great shape. The work that's done on that road, it's basically the responsibility of those residents to do that work, so they all pitch in and get some gravel to make it safe. But I think that's one of the challenges that we face. There is an option for roads like that to be taken over by council to maintain. Obviously, to do that, it would need to be in a satisfactory standard. For that section of road to get anywhere near satisfactory, which requires not just to put some gravel on it, but you've got to fix your drainage, do your culverts. There may be some small, I think there's one low point, maybe a small bridge, but it's in the vicinity of $250,000 to $300,000 just to fix a 4 kilometre section to make it a reasonable standard gravel road. So I use that as a real example where myself and 3 of our assets team visited the group. We had a really good conversation about a range of things. It was a really beneficial meeting. I think we'll be doing more of that as we have our big conversation. But it does highlight the challenge we face with this one example of a 4 kilometre section, $300,000. It's actually not our responsibility, but it is our residents who are impacted by it, and they're concerned in particular about the safety on that section of road. So Yeah, it's a good example, and we'll certainly feed some of that information into the report that we bring back to the March meeting. If you get a chance, go for a drive to the end of Lagoon Road. It's interesting. Probably want to have a four-wheel drive.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Unanimous. Page 10, item 6.1, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 16th of November.
Yeah, I'll move.
Councillor Hayes,
Second.
Humphries. Everyone happy with the accuracy of those minutes? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. 6.2, minutes extraordinary meeting held on the 18th of January.
Move.
Morrissey,
Second.
Hayes. Same there, everyone happy with them? Accuracy? Okay, put that motion in. All those in favour? Over page to page 12, minutes arising out of the minutes of the ordinary meeting, 16th of November 2021, or the extraordinary meeting, 18th of January 2022. No business arising? Okay, declarations of interest. Has any councillor or general manager have you received any declarations of interest?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I've received two declarations of interest. So the first one is from Councillor Hayes, so it relates to the matter 17.5, the customer experience report, and 17.7, development applications determined. The nature of the interest is that Councillor Hayes obviously uses the planning portal, and I think has a couple of comments relating to that when we get to those items. Has identified that as a non-pecuniary insignificant conflict, as it's an information report, no decisions are being made, therefore Councillor Hayes will remain in the meeting. The second one is from myself, so Vaughan McDonald, General Manager, in the matter of 17.9, which is the disclosure of interest return for the General Manager that is put on the table at this meeting this evening. So again, it's an information report. It is obviously of a pecuniary nature, but it's an information report. There's no decisions. It's procedural. Therefore, there won't be a need to leave the meeting.
Thank you. Petitions nil. Notice of motion nil. Mayor's report on page 13. I'll move that. Seconder.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey. Any questions? Bearing in mind this goes back to November.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Just a comment on the 7th of January, the under-12 cricket tournament in Casino.
Sorry, 7th of February?
7th of January, the under-12 cricket tournament in Casino.
Yep.
Just how, just a comment about how well the grounds were prepared and that sort of thing without short notice, and how good it was to have all those different teams in Casino for the tournament to continue.
Yep, this eventuated this under-12 cricket tournament in Casino. Actually, we usually get a, please, Mr General Manager or Director Zeller, correct me if I'm wrong, because you know more about the Cricket Association than I, but the tournament's usually held in Lismore, and we do help them out with a few games. This year, the Lismore grounds were closed, so it was transferred to here, and it rained on and off. The parents of the cricketers were there always with the covers and used to pull them on and off when a shower come over, but it was great to have the big contingent of cricketers, and naturally they'd booked in at other areas, but some were staying at Evans Head and Lismore and places like that, but they spent a lot of time here, and I know the local cricket junior cricket club made a really good income out of the canteen and other options that they had. I think we used 5 fields at Queen Elizabeth Park. and also over at Jubilee Park. And some of the comments from the people, the parents, were that these grounds were as good as they played in Parramatta or some other regional cities. The children played on their own ground. So that was a really good feedback. And I would like, Mr General Manager, now it's been brought up, to ask you to congratulate Daniel Rowlands, our staff member, for doing those cricket pitches. I know on the number 2 oval, which is the main ground, when they were taking photos after the presentations, they went out onto the pitch to get some photos, and Daniel was actually there mowing the other pitch next to it because they had a Cavaliers game the next day. So he's dedicated in his job, and he's done a fantastic job. If you'd pass that on, so maybe you'd like to say something, or
Oh, I'm certainly happy to pass that on to Daniel. He's actually in the gallery tonight, so he can, I probably won't need to pass too much on. But,
it's done. It's done then.
But I think it's important to also acknowledge our open spaces team, in particular Dave Maguire, who I know Daniel works with a lot, and they work together. Daniel's role is actually through the cricket club, so it's not in his role as an employee. He works for the Cricket Associations, does get some remuneration for that, but I know how much time he puts into it. There's a massive amount of volunteer time. But I think it's just a good example of where volunteers and council working together can generate some really good outcomes. And yeah, it had a really good vibe to it, having that carnival, and I'm sure in future years they'll be keen to especially come and play on QE2 and John McDonald Oval, which are the turf wickets. So yeah, a good result. So thanks, Daniel, and we'll pass that on to our open spaces team, and in particular Dave Maguire.
Any other questions?
No, Mr Mayor, just the one.
Thank you.
Got one? Would you like
That's
to
a
take
good.
the...
It's good to start the new term. Oh, Councillor Hayes.
Would you like to take the opportunity just to remind us what the 2 funding announcements were on the 9th of December from Chris Galapagos?
Yes, one was for the swimming pool at Coracai, the splash pad, and the signs, to upgrade all the signs at all the villages and towns. And the other one was a funding for some play equipment at Crawford Square.
Just to add to the signs, that's also to include the Aboriginal language, which I know is a matter that I think you brought to council in the last term, Councillor Hayes. So we'll be working with them closely to get that wording included into those signs.
I see both of those grants are noted in the grant funding in the back of the minutes. So.
No other questions or comments? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Delegates report, there's nil. Matters determined without debate. Has any councillors got any items they'd like to call?
14.3, Mr Mayor. Planning.
And I also have 14.1. Others? So I need a motion to adopt 14.2, 15.1 and 15.2. Is that correct? Yep.
Sorry, can we call 15.2 because we have a presentation?
Oh, sorry. And 15.2. We're going to call that. Sorry, so we are now calling, we are now motion for 14.2 and 15.1.
Move that way, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Humphries.
Second.
Councillor Cornish. I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, 14.1 on page 16. I will move that recommendation, and I'd like to add a part 3, and it reads that council receives part 3. My apologies, I usually give you a slip of paper before, but that council receives regular updated reports on the progress of the Northern Rivers Rail Trail. Could I get a seconder for that, please?
I'll second.
Councillor McGillen? Right. Councillor McGillen. Councillors, I support the recommendation and the report. I think the report's very informative, but it does on page 17 identify some key milestones, and as some of those are achieved, I'd like a report that's to come back to council to keep us right up to date on this project that's I think is going to be very beneficial to our community. Any other speakers? Councillor Hayes.
Taking the wrong things off here. I had a question, but it relates to your inclusion of the regular updates. I was just going to ask if we get regular updates on where Lismore are up to so they don't get left behind. That's going to cover that. So
Yeah, that could be, because it's linked together, I think that would be good if we can include that.
Yeah, we can do that. Our team's working closely with not only Lismore but Tweed. Tweed have actually commenced construction, got some pilot sections, so that is a really effective working group, and Byron are starting to engage with that as well. So there's getting a real momentum, now that in total there's commitments of just over 30 million across the 132 kilometres of the rail trail, so a lot of support for it.
Any other speakers? Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And apologies, I have no idea what I'm doing tonight, but I can't stop my glasses from fogging up. Second only by the width of an eyelash to the drill hole precinct, which is ahead of the other amazing Richmond Valley signature projects by only a hair's breadth. I remain a huge supporter of the Northern Rivers Rail Trail. As most of you are aware, to get a better understanding of rail trails, my husband Stephen and I rode the Otago Rail Trail in New Zealand in around 2012. We were wearing what we were wearing and a change of clothes and toiletries, and we purchased everything else we needed along the way. We rode the 150 kilometres from Middlemarch to Clyde over 3 days, and it was an amazing experience, and chatting with the locals was very rewarding. The trail has so much to offer so many in the Richmond Valley. I've brought along a present to share with Mr Burney. It's a book that apologies, but I forgot that I had it. It's From Steam Trains to Pedal Power. And on one of our overnight stays, we were at a school that was shut down due to the downturn in the economy. And it had been converted into a bed and breakfast. And the caretakers, they came to see how we were going and offer us an extra cup of coffee for breakfast. And they brought us this book because they knew that why we were actually visiting the area. Looking through it again this morning, what stood out to me is that the actual history of rail is itself a huge drawcard to visitors to the rail trail, as many rail trail visitors are actually train and rail buffs. The book is full of pictures of steam trains and goods trains and workers building the line, building the viaducts and making cuttings prior to building the bridges, pictures of wooden trestle bridges, official openings of railway stations. And that is why the mini rail and museum and the casino railway station are integral to the visitors' experience also. We were greeted at the end of our first day by the owner of the newly built barn, able to host 4 families. He invited us to join him for a drink at the pub, and he wasn't shouting. The pub was 100 metres down the road, which he'd just bought. His advice was, build it and they will come. I'm supportive and excited at the progress to date, and I believe that tourists will come and that it will be a safe off-road cycling opportunity for locals and a safe and fun adventure for family outings. Just a word of advice from experience to anyone who is thinking of riding the trail for more than 3 hours: purchase yourself a gel bike seat cover and a pair of riding breeches, and use either or both.
Any other councillors? I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. 14.3 on page 26, Councillor Morrissey.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
You moving?
Yeah.
Second.
Where did the second come from? Councillor Cornish, thank you. Councillor Morrissey?
Yes, Mr Mayor, just a modification application for DA, and the report's fairly lengthy and it says it all. And on page 30, the proposal is considered acceptable on merit and is in the public interest.
Thank you. So it's a planning issue, so that's the reason you call it. Thank you. Any other speakers? Want to write a reply?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. 15.1 on page 31. Mr General Manager, I believe we have a presentation. Sorry, 15.2, I'm sorry. I haven't taken 15.1 out. On page 37 we are councillors. Presentation.
Yeah, we've got Dean Fordham with us this evening to give us our quarterly budget review statement overview. Thanks. Over to you, Dean.
Welcome, Mr Fordham.
Thank you. Council's quarterly budget review as at 31st of December has been completed. So I'll be going through the overall movements in the budget and cash result, as well as a summary of the recommended changes for the December quarter for both operating and capital works budgets. So the budget summary and cash result table on the screen. The two most important columns are the last two, being the proposed changes for the December quarter and the revised budget as at 31 December. So working through that, you can see operating income is increasing by $2.6 million, capital grants by $1.5 million to revise total income from continuing operations of $87.9 million. Operating expenses are increasing by just under $2.6 million. The operating result from continuing operations has improved by just over $1.5 million to a surplus of $16.2 million. The operating result before capital grants and contributions has improved slightly by $56,000. It's still a loss of $3.5 million being projected at the end of the year. Capital expenditure has decreased by $3.6 million to a revised budget of $45.7 million. And use of restricted funds has decreased by $5.1 million to just over $7 million. And the unrestricted cash surplus remains unchanged at $288,000. With operating income and expenditure budgets, there's only been three main changes. That includes a $969,000 grant from the EPA for clean-up of bushfire-generated green waste, and that's on Council's unsealed road network as a result of the 2019 bushfires. There's also been a $1.5 million increase in private works income and expenditure for finalisation of works with the Pacific Highway upgrade. There's also been a $140,000 grant for the restoration of burnt riparian areas along the Richmond River, with Council's share being $20,000. In terms of our capital works program, it continues to be impacted by supply constraints and the availability of contractors like a lot of other industries. And along with wet weather and some unplanned emergency works, it's certainly impacting the delivery of some of those projects to be able to be achieved by 30 June. So that's why a review was undertaken of the capital works program, which, as I said, has decreased by $3.6 million. The major changes in that include an increase of $197,000 due to grant funding for the Casino Library Community Courtyard, with those works should be completed by 30 June. As well as that, under sports grounds, we've had an increase of $90,000 for foreshore lighting down at Evans Head due to works being undertaken by Reflection Holiday Parks. There's also been an increase of $50,000 for Crawford Square play space, which has been mentioned tonight as well. The balance of that expenditure will be spent next year, so the total project value is just under $400,000. Under community centres and halls, there's been an increase of $85,000 due to an unexpended grant from Biz Rebuild. That's been transferred from reserves towards the Ratville Hall project. Under building and maintaining roads, we've been successful with a number of grant programs, including $55,000, as has been mentioned tonight, for the town entrance signage to acknowledge our traditional custodians, along with $212,000 from Transport for New South Wales for school zone infrastructure improvements. It's also a $250,000 increase to commence the rehabilitation of Ben's Road, and the balance of that project will be spent next year. The total of that project's just under $1.4 million. There's been a $157,000 increase for bridge designs, including Tatham Bridge as well as Broadwater Bridge. That's funded from our Road Rehabilitation Reserve. And offsetting these increases has been a decrease of $766,000 for Willocks Bridge, and that's mainly due to difficulties in sourcing suitable contractors. And the main reason for that is the success of the Fixing Country Bridges grants program. It's been oversubscribed. It's a lot of councils are, competing for those contractors at the same time. And under tourism, there's been $1 million increase in capital grants. That's due to the approval of phase 2 of the Northern Rivers Rail Trail of $6.8 million. We have received that $1 million, but the majority of the capital works will be done next financial year. Under waste management, there's been a number of changes, been an $800,000 decrease for the capping of cells 1 to 4 at Namoona Landfill. And that's mainly due to a change in EPA design requirements and phasing that in with the construction of cell 6. It's also been a $500,000 decrease for the construction of cell 6, also at Namoona Landfill. Part of those works involve leachate ponds and retention basins, and a lot of that requires dry weather, which is not helping us at the moment. So a lot of that will be transferred to next year, but it still leaves $1.4 million for the current year. It's also been a $100,000 decrease for the FOGO processing facility, which leaves $50,000 for planning and environmental studies in the current year. Under stormwater drainage, there's been a $300,000 decrease for Illawong Lane drainage works at Evans Head. That's mainly due to the complexity of the design and the infrastructure that's going to be affected by the works, as well as construction phasing considerations. So there will be an external review done on that design, and that should be completed by 30 June this year. Water supplies, there's been a $320,000 reduction for the process design approvals at Casino Water Treatment Plant, and that's mainly due to delays with the external consultant that's undertaking that work. There's been savings also in a number of projects were completed under budget, and that's transferred over $200,000 back to water reserves. There's been 2 main changes in sewage services. We've removed the sewer relining program of $750,000. We've recently replaced our CCTV camera. So along with assistance from an external company, it's allowing us to develop more accurate condition assessments of our sewer mains and base future programs on high-risk mains rather than age-based assessments. So the intention is to develop a more effective relining program to commence in 22-23. So we normally have a 2-year rolling program for that. There's also been a $690,000 decrease in the Casino Sewage Treatment Plant desludging program. Council's currently in the process of testing that sludge to determine optimal treatment solutions. That will involve further discussions with the EPA, which means that will delay any commencement of work this year. I guess in conclusion, the major changes in the quarterly review are either the result of additional grant funding being approved, additional private works income for the Pacific Highway upgrade completion, and a review of the capital works program, which is now projected to be $45.7 million. As mentioned before, there's still a risk that the delivery of the capital works program will still be impacted by those supply constraints and contractor availability, but any of those impacts will continue to be monitored and reported to Council in future quarterly reviews or monthly budget adjustment reports. So in summary, the projected financial position at year end of Council remains satisfactory.
Thank you. Any questions? No, you've done a too good a job. You've got no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I need a mover for the motion, please.
I'll move.
Councillor Hayes, seconder.
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Hayes to speak.
Nothing.
Councillor Morrissey. Any other councillors like to say anything or questions? No, well, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Fordham. I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Page 42, item 16, general business nil. Over the page 17, matters for information. Could I get a mover, please?
Move, Mr Mayor.
Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Humphrey, second. Councillor Morrissey, any councillors would like to speak now or ask a question for the next items through until page 83. So has any councillor got any business they'd like to ask a question on, or?
Yeah, I have. Just on the 17.5 customer experience report,
What page?
page 62, and falls into 63. The question I'm going to ask.
67?
62, page 62.
62, sorry.
Yep.
Yep.
Just under the heading there, the e-planning portal. The average pre-assessment time by council theirs is included at 10 days, which is good. Okay, I think it's a lot less than that on a lot of jobs. Okay, but when you get over the page there, it goes, and I could have this wrong. You can let me know if I have. It says local development performance monitoring. It says DAs online against DAs, whatever LDPM means. So I assume that's manual ones, is it?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the LDPM is Local Development Performance Monitoring.
Okay. So the electronic assessment, it says there, it says it's they've compared the two, right? And we only went online in July last year, didn't we? For the electronic lodgement.
I think it might have been later, Councillor.
No, I thought
No, it's July.
July?
July. It's supposed to be January and they moved it to July.
I'm not sure. It was last year, but...
Yeah, it was last year
Yeah.
anyway. But those figures are from 2018, 19. So I don't get it. I just can't work out what that's all about. But
I think the time periods are a little bit confusing because I know we had it optional from 1 January last year.
Yep.
It went compulsory online from 1 July.
that's right.
But this
Yep.
actually says online DA from December 2018,
That's quite a few years ago.
which actually, that December 2018 actually predates the other, which is 18-19, which includes December 2018. So
Anyway,
I think this is data that's been provided obviously through the portal on all of our councils. So yeah, it appears to be a valid question on how they put that one together. I think it's from the planning portal, I assume, or the New South Wales Planning provide the data.
Anyway, we'll move over that, but the first sentence on page 63 says that there's a reduction in assessment timeframe since moving to the online lodgement. When you go back up to those graphs, if you add on the average pre-assessment time back onto them, they're actually longer, and every one except for the Kyogle one.
I think a planner's response to that might be that the first graph you're talking about is the time it takes to get the DA to a standard that can be accepted, that it has all of the information required. So if someone does a whiz-bang top-notch DA, the assessment, the pre-assessment time will be, 1 or 2 days, depending on.
That's correct, but if you add those pre-assessment times back onto all those light blue columns there,
Yep.
they all shoot up above the dark blue ones.
Yep.
Okay, so the time from when you lodge hasn't really changed.
Director Jones.
It's just
Through you,
just
Mr Mayor. So, Councillor Hayes, before, when we used to take development applications over the counter in hard copy, we didn't have any metrics around those timeframes. So more often than not, people were turned away at the front counter to go and get additional information and come back, and it might have, been a ping pong kind of process for a while. So we don't know what those timeframes took. So now that we've got the planning portal where they all come into the portal, they get vetted, and when they're at a suitable standard and meet the requirements of lodging a development application, that's when we accept them. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It looks like it's actually not a great benefit, but we don't actually have any timeframes to justify or benchmark against all those years where we were dealing with people, over the phone and at front counter inquiries that we were turning their DAs away because they're inadequate.
And when you go back to page 62, our 10-day assessment, pre-assessment is really good compared to all the other councils. So that's what I was getting to. And look, the other thing is down the bottom of the page, it says construction certificates, section 68, section 138, required to support each development application, which is a fact. Are we going to start keeping statistics on them so we know exactly how long it takes to get something through council? Because at the moment, those statistics aren't available.
Through you, Mr Mayor. At this point in time, we hadn't considered it. We are still trying to navigate the planning portal like a lot of people that are lodging applications, but if that's something that council would like us to see if we can investigate and report on those timeframes too, I'm happy to look into it.
While I'm going over to...
So I might just, with a quick comment, sorry, just because it's on that point, because I think you're moving to another item. Yeah, I know we've got some of that data. I think one of the things that I certainly noticed in some of the data that our building certifiers capture now that they're using the tablets, the systems, is the number of inspections that they do as well. So I think it would be useful for that data to be brought to you, just so that gives you a whole picture of what our development and assessment teams have to deal with. They are dealing with it a lot, and it's a topic that all councils are looking at the moment because resourcing is a challenge. But it's important because as we come out of the impacts of the last couple of years, we need that stimulus. So, we'll get that information and bring it back to you.
Through the chair, can I ask a question on that same topic before you move on? Is that okay? Still on the customer experience to 17.5, I remember that transferring into the e-planning was a concern around this table for the non-savvy customers, and we were worried that they would be disadvantaged. Can I have a comment on just the second paragraph where it talks about the small meeting space that's being developed in the foyer and how that's going, what the take-up on that is? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. If you happen to have a look in our foyer area, we have put a small meeting space in. So we've done a sort of a semi-enclosed timber structure with some seating and table. We're actually currently still fitting it out with IT, but the idea is that we're going to have a large screen in there with capabilities of assessing and helping people put their development applications in, and any other meetings that council staff may require with members of the public. So we're nearly there of having it all hooked up, but it's a quite a nice space. We've done a bit of a zhuzh in the front counter, and it's looking very nice and making it more user friendly, so we can engage with customers as they come in rather than doing it to the front counter where people are doing other transactions like paying rates, etc. We've made a little discreet corner in our big foyer.
Thank you very much, Director Jones, and thank you, Councillor Hayes.
Councillor Hayes?
Yeah, just move on to, was it 17.7, isn't it? Yeah, 17.7, which is along the same lines, and you'll see there where the General Manager mentioned the inspections undertaken down the bottom on that page, on page 75. Okay, so there's quite a few inspections there going on, but that's over that 3-month period, of course. And above it there's the average assessment days for applications determined in November, December and January. You'll see January there was only 8 development applications approved with an average of 50 days. Okay, but I've since found out that there was a 20-day close down period there over the Christmas period. But still, if for 8 DAs in 30 days, it's not really a lot unless there was a big one amongst them. And just, yeah. I just think these figures, as they're developing, we're going to get a good picture eventually, but I think they need refining a bit just to, just so there's a bit more information there.
I just, at the JA meeting the other day, we're back on page 17, or either way, 17.5, some general managers and some mayors were, there was a discussion during the meeting about DAs and the problems that everyone's having in really getting planners and inspectors. It's a major concern through the whole industry. And one general manager said, or was it a mayor, said that they had 60 DAs sitting on the table they can't get at. And, it's not uncommon for 3 months to get a DA at. And everyone does not know where it's going to end. The government's trying to make it faster, but some of the comments were it's taking longer through some of the requirements and the regulations they're bringing them in. So yeah, it's a massive concern right across the North Coast, and I'd say right across New South Wales, the whole industry. So how we fix it, I don't know. If you just can't get staff, it's just, how it is, and it's unfortunate, but it's not only Richmond Valley. And when I see that, we're in some of the best figures, but I do realise too that we don't have the amount of DAs that some other councils do, but you'd think some of those big councils would have more staff, and they just can't attract them. So it's a problem.
Adding to that is the time that, if it's an integrated development or something that requires some input from a New South Wales government agency, that often is what delays our determination of a DA, is waiting for those responses from the different agencies, whether it's, Rural Fire Service or Office of Environment and Heritage or the Natural Resource Access Regulator or Water New South Wales. You can get long delays of months. So yeah, it's obviously an issue that's not just unique for us resourcing, but for them as well. But obviously it does add to the frustration for the person who wants to just get on with their development. So yeah, we're trying to find solutions, but it is difficult. What we are doing is, in some of our DAs, we are getting consultant planners to assist us. So we are doing some of that to assist. But yeah, it's something we're very conscious of, but we just got to work with with our team, who are a hard-working team, to try and get as many through as quickly as we can.
Just the last word on those statistics. When you go back through those statistics and start adding numbers to see how long things are taken, some DAs are simple and they're out in 2 days. Some are complex and they're on stop the clock for 3 months. Others are just taking 30 days because that's what they take. Some are taking 40 days. So to get a comparison, you know, you might get a run of DAs or, you know, compliant developments or section 4.55 amendments, and then it changes all those figures. You know, you might get a run of half a dozen of them that take 2 days. The figures don't really reflect what's going on, I don't think. And I know that's all you got to go off, but yeah, bit of a hard one. But just thought I'd bring it up.
Have to get a statistician involved and start looking at medians and all those different, you know, which would might give a clearer picture.
When you compare to other councils, are they reporting the same way? Probably not. So.
Has any other councillor got anything on matters for information?
Yeah, I've got another one. Sorry.
Yes. Councillor Hayes.
To find it now. 17.6, the Progress Woodburn Corrocky Road upgrade. Just a question, we talked about it before, I think it might have been an information session. The floodway, the flat between the Bungawalbin Bridge and, is it Percy's Road in there, that flat that goes along there where the water flows over, you know, very, very regularly. Have we looked at, we talked about, we mentioned about bridging it. Does that include the use of culverts, or is bridging and culverts 2 separate procedures? And has that been looked at?
It's definitely being looked at, and it's to include culverts. So yeah, we're definitely aware of that issue. Obviously the aim is to reduce the periods of time when there are floods in that area, that road is out of action. We know it's the low point, so definitely being looked at. Obviously it does add significantly to the cost for that section, but our aim is to get a better outcome for that section of the road.
That section of road, when it's out of action due to floodwater, the pressure that's put on Oakland Road, through Corrocky, back up through the back road to Lismore, you know, all that must be, do they take all that into consideration when they're assessing the cost of that, or is it just based on the cost of building the road?
Well, we've got a bucket of money, 10 mil over 3 years, and we've got to cut the cloth to fit that. So it's probably something we don't directly consider, but it's a fair point because, yeah, it does put a lot of stress, particularly at Oakland Road. But we've got we're starting again in, well, some of the preliminary works is happening at the moment. Serious action will be happening from about May, once hopefully the weather dries a touch, and the team will be working from that point on until, because we've got the 7 million comes in the next financial year. So we've got a bit left in this financial year, and then it'll be roll on and spend the full amount and get as much of that road upgraded as we can in a prioritised manner. And obviously a lot of the design work's already been done, so but it's expensive building roads. I think at the moment they're getting around the 700,000 to 750 per kilometre, which is better than we initially, I suppose, estimated. But and the good thing with that is it's a combination of our own project teams working with local contractors to get those jobs done.
Just to add to that comment, from a funding agreement perspective, they're quite explicit on what we can use the funding for. There's not much scope for variation to add things in as we go. So our challenge is to do it efficiently as possible so that we can do those things with a bit of planning and if we've got the funding left over.
Just because it's relevant to this, I'm not sure, I have to remember whether it's in this report, but there will be some works happening over the next month or two on, so it's Queen Elizabeth Drive. It's still same road, MR145, but just outside the shops in Corrikai. The road's significantly damaged in that area. Obviously a lot of turning vehicles through that section, so there will be some improvement works happening the next month or two to fix up that key intersection in Corrikai. We're looking at funding that potentially with a bit of support from our heavy haulage fees.
Councillor Deegan.
Yes, page 52, grant application submitted, local collaboration and environmental education. So, yeah, two speakers in public access, Miss Johnson and Dr. Gates, spoke about this funding in the employment of an ecologist. So just a couple of questions, I guess, around what the role involves, and I think Ms Johnson asked a question or made a point about whether they'd be involved in development applications, so some clarification on that. It looks like it's just one bucket of money, so would it be an ongoing position dependent on further funding, or is it time limited? And I guess it might be how long is a piece of string on this one? When would the outcome of that funding application likely to be known?
Mr. General Manager.
I'll let Director Jones respond to
Director
that.
Jones.
She's got all the detail all over it.
Councillor Deegan, this is through the Environmental Trust. It's a highly contested pool of grant money. I've got to be honest, we're not too hopeful given it is highly contested, but we've put in it's a 3-year program. So the aim is to educate and collaborate with the community to raise the profile of the Richmond River and provide face-to-face education, including field studies, workshops, through community planting days, and creating a living resource of endemic and native seedlings, and to create a local network that can work together to tackle the issues of river health, basically. So it's a quite specific role. It's in a couple of stages. So the first year was to employ an ecologist for 2 days a week for a 3-year period, and they're going to gather information and work with community groups and look at scope of works and outcomes. The second year was develop and compile information on endemic native plants and develop a book specific to the Richmond Valley area. And the third part of this program in year 3 was to educate and to establish a nursery for seedlings. So it's really about river health. At this point in time, there was no intention to have them assessing applications and things like that. It's a specific program under this Environmental Trust, and the scope's written that way to meet the requirements of that funding source. And I don't know when it's going to be announced, I've got to be honest.
Thank you.
Just following up on that, if the DA is being determined and there's environmental issues, the assessor would get clarity from a consultant or staff on that issue?
That's correct, Mr Mayor. So we do a number of referrals to environment heritage with regards to biodiversity, and also our planning assessment staff. Whilst they're not ecologists and experts, they do have some knowledge and expertise with regards to sort of those basic ecological considerations when assessing a development application. But when we've got something that we might be unsure of, or a consultant's report that is lodged with an application is unclear, we often go back and ask for additional information. But at the end of the day, a lot of the supporting information that comes in with development applications are written and signed off on by suitably qualified people. It's like when you go to an engineer to get certification for a footing for your house. So we have to have some faith that these people have got their accreditation, they go through a process to get their accreditation, that they have done the right thing and they've provided all the information. So, but we do referrals to consultants and also government bodies if we don't have that area of expertise and if there's a particular and significant issue that we need to make sure that we need to address adequately.
I think it's just important to note, given the comments that Councillor Deegan referred to that Ms Johnson made, that the DA went through a referral process to government agencies, and those government agencies included the Department of Planning and Infrastructure and Environment, their Biodiversity and Conservation Division, and their comment was that the development was, they obviously assessed the development in detail and that it was acceptable, subject to recommendations, and those recommendations would then be included in the conditions. Crown Lands, no objections, subject to some recommendations. The DPI Flooding Division was acceptable, subject to some recommendations. National Parks and Wildlife Service, acceptable, subject to recommendations. The Natural Resource Access Regulator, a controlled activity approval wasn't required for what is the proposed activity. And the New South Wales Rural Fire Service said it was acceptable, subject to some general GTA, was that general terms of approval? Yeah. So I think it's important, while there's commentary about whether people like DAs or not, our team has to go through a very thorough process in line with the legislative requirements. They have to refer things to other agencies, as Director Jones has mentioned. We get advice and reports have to be submitted by consultants. So I think you need to be sure that we go through a thorough process, and often those issues that are raised are and they are valid issues, but there are ways of dealing with that through conditions that landowners then have to comply with. So there is a detailed report on the assessment of that DA, which happy to make available to councillors. It was approved under delegation, but we can provide that to you, so that it gives you an indication of the process that went through, and it was thorough. That DA did take quite some time. It would have probably bumped our figures up that we were talking about 5 minutes ago, but that's what required to get to an outcome. So I suppose I'll just make those comments just to give you a bit of comfort that it goes through a thorough process before we get to that situation of approving it, obviously with conditions.
Or rejecting it. Any DA.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. In any DA, obviously we do reject. As you know, recently we did reject the New Italy Highway Service Centre. So yeah, sometimes it can go either way.
All right, councillors, any more on item 17? Councillor Morris, you want right of reply?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
I'll put that motion, and all those in favour? Carried. We now move to page 84. 18, questions on notice nil. 19, is any questions for the next meeting in writing? Take that as a no. And now we move to page 85. I need a motion to go into closed council. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Morrissey. Seconder.
Second.
Councillor Cornish. Mr General Manager, has there been any written representation made regarding the meeting going into closed council? If so, could you read the representation, please?
None have been received, Mr Mayor.
Are there any verbal representations from the members of the public? Thank you for your attendance, Gary. Any councillors like to speak and go? All in favour? Carried. read the resolutions of closed council or direct to staff member 2? Who's got the first one?
Director Zeller.
Yes, when you're ready, just go through them.
In the item 20.1, tender VP 277869, design and construct Willicks Bridge replacement Casino Corrocky Road, Tatham. Recommend that council declines the only submission received for tender VP 277869, design and construct Willicks Bridge replacement, due to it being non-conforming and higher than the budget allocated for the works. 2, applies clause 178(3)(e) of the Local Government General Regulation 2021 to authorise the General Manager to enter into direct negotiations with suitably qualified contractors with a view to obtaining works that provide council with the best outcome both from a financial and delivery perspective, and to finalise the terms of the contract or agreement and affixing the seal of council where necessary. 3, notes that the outcomes of the negotiations will be reported to council for information at a future meeting. In item 20.2, tender T492122 RTC, supply of ready-mix concrete. Recommend that 1, for the supply and delivery of ready-mix concrete, council appoints the following tenders to a panel of suppliers for the period 1 April 2022 to 31 March 2024. Boral Resources, Graham's Concrete and Wholesome. In item 2, a provision is allowed for a further 12-month extension to the contract based on satisfactory supplier performance, which may take this contract through to 31 March 2025. 3, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of council where necessary. In item 20.3, tender VP 283594, detailed design of Casino to Bentley section of the Northern Rivers Rail Trail, including ancillary works. Recommend that 1, council accepts the tender from Birchall's Engineering Solutions, which represents the best value for council at $362,900 exclusive of GST. And 2, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of council where necessary.
In item 20.4, financial hardship application, property ID 137795, recommend that council, number 1, notes the options for debt relief as provided in this report for outstanding rates and charges totalling $60,760.74 for this property. Number 2, notes the extensive assistance and support that council has offered to the ratepayer over the course of this matter, dating back to 2010. Number 3, enters into an extended agreement for financial hardship as provided in option 2 within the report. And number 4, notes the provision for sale of land for unpaid rates and charges that is available to council under the Local Government Act 1993 should the property owner default on the financial hardship agreement. Under report 20.5, financial hardship application, property ID 138240, recommended that council, number 1, notes the options for debt relief that's provided within the report for outstanding rates and charges totalling $19,140.20 for this property. Number 2, notes the extensive assistance and support the council has offered the ratepayer over the course of this matter dating back to 2017. Number 3, enters into an extended agreement for financial hardship as provided in option 2 as detailed in the report. And number 4, notes the provision for sale of land for unpaid rates and charges that is available to council under the Local Government Act 1993 should the property owner default on the financial hardship agreement.
Can I just ask, I could be reading it wrong, where we've got enters into the extended agreement, should that be option 3 now? It's still 2? It's still 5?
Yeah, refers
That's
to
right.
an option that's listed in the report.
Okay.
Doesn't refer to the
Oh, thank you.
section 2 in the resolution, which is what I think you were
Yep.
thinking
Yeah,
about,
thank
which is
you.
adjusted. Yep.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Councillors and staff, that concludes the meeting, so I'll declare it closed and everyone travel home safely, please.